Welcome back. Brent Lehman, Superintendent of North Adams, here again with one of my live streams. I want to start today by just saying thank you for answering my question from last week when I wanted to know if this was still something that you wanted me to continue. And it was overwhelming for me to continue, so here I am. And if you were someone that didn't want me to continue, I think you can just turn me off and go about your business. But welcome back. And my plan for today was to maybe even move this to the end of the day and talk about our first day back in school and how it went and all of those things. Well, you all know by now that we're not having our first day of school. Um, Instead, yesterday we had to make the decision to move the start of school. Currently, that's been moved to Monday, the 17th, and we're hoping desperately that that holds as the date. Um, so we tried to get that information out as quickly as we could yesterday when we finally made that decision. But let me try to go back and say, so why in the world did we do this? Believe you me, if we had had any other option, we would have used it because this created issues for parents. It created issues for our people here at school. It created issues for our school calendar, and on and on and on and on. But before I get into a lot of the details of how our process actually worked really well yesterday, I want to become a teacher and talk about two terms that you may have been hearing this summer. You're going to hear these terms as we move into the fall. The first one is a term called presumptive positive. And what that means, you've all heard about people who go and get a test to see if they have COVID. Many of you, I'm sure, know someone who has gone and had the test taken. Well, some people go and they're just going because they want to have the test and they want to know. Other people have begun to develop symptoms and maybe they think they do have it. Well, a presumptive positive is someone who has been tested, but we don't know the results yet. But when you step back and look at it, even the non-medical people can go, yeah, I think that may be positive. That doesn't mean it is, and it could certainly still be negative, but that's what a presumptive positive situation is. We presume that this test will come back positive. The other term I want to talk a little bit about is contact tracing. This is also a term that you may have heard, and it's happening all over the world, actually. And what it is if someone is positive, then people try to go back and determine who they were in contact with, hence the term contact tracing. And so you work through that, and certainly for most of us, if any one of us would test positive, our family that we live with would obviously be first on that list of who we were in contact with. It might be someone we share a ride with to work. It might be someone we work closely with. Any of those things that would make a possible, and I want to emphasize a possible exposure. Doesn't mean that there is an exposure, but that's what contact tracing is all about. So given those two terms, let me talk about what happened yesterday. We learned that there was a presumptive positive, a possible positive case. So that brought our admin team together and we started talking about what the tracing would look like. Again, we didn't know if it was a positive yet, but we also knew that school started the next morning and we weren't going to have a lot of time. And we had talked all summer about what happens if we have a case, what does that look like, how do we contact trace it, and all of those things. And quite frankly, we talked about what happens if this would be the day before school starts. We didn't have a lot of plans for if it happens right before school starts because there are so many variables on that day. Well, as it would be for us, it was the day before school starts. Um, so we got our heads together. We involved the health department and we talked through where we were at and what that would look like. But again, by the middle of the afternoon, we still didn't know if we were talking about a positive case or a negative. If it's a negative case, life goes on and nothing changes. Um, but we were concerned that if it would be positive, the safety of everyone involved and then trying to bring people to school the next day, it was just not wise um, to go ahead and bring everybody in. So why did we close school and move the start date? Well, we have spent all summer coming up with a very robust virtual online plan. And actually, many of you are going to do that this first week and well through the first 9 weeks. We're prepared that if it had been a small group of students, we would have had them learn virtually and life would have gone on. If it had been a small group of teachers, we would have had them on virtually from home and still teaching the students. It might have been a whole classroom of students that had to go home. We could have still provided great resources and an online environment. We also talked about what happens if it's an entire grade level. Well, again, we would have had our virtual plans ready to go and we could have continued to have school. We even had conversation about would we ever be in a situation where we closed just the elementary and sent those kids home or just the high school. Maybe not as likely, but again, we could have switched on a dime to virtual learning and been up and running and moving forward. But in all of those situations, even if we would have said we're closing the entire building, the entire district, we would have flipped, went to virtual learning, and here we go. But we would have still had school. Well, we wouldn't really have wanted to do that for day one, but that wasn't the reason we didn't do it for today. The reason we didn't do it for today is because your students don't have their laptops. They don't have their iPads. They don't have the devices they need to do virtual learning. Now, some of you would have had devices at home that you might have been able to log in and do some things. But at the end of the day, nobody had their devices. So all these options we had ready to go, we couldn't use any of them. And so that left us with, we're just going to have to delay the start. And we know that came pretty late in the afternoon. We held on to it as long as we thought we could so that people could still make plans for a different way to deal with their students today when that came. So that's how all this rolled out yesterday. I want to take a moment and thank my admin team. They spent hours as a group. We were trying to figure out what this looks like. And again, a big thank you to Dr. Ainsworth and Holly up at the health department. I'll tell you, those people up there are being run ragged, and not just because of us, but just because of this whole COVID world. So a big thank you to them for working with us and planning that. Our goal is to have school on Monday, but as we all know, that can all change very quickly. And so we will keep you in the loop as much as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can as we go forward. I would like to say we've had our hiccup and now life will go on just great the rest of the year. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. but I want you to know we have plans ready to implement, and those conversations worked yesterday, even in the worst case scenario that we were faced with. And we'll continue to do that. So always be listening, always be watching as we move forward. And just know that the safety of all of our students and our staff will always be the final determiner. What can we do safely and what can we not do safely? And that will be the final decision. And that's where we were yesterday. And we'll be ready for if we need to do this in the future. And just wanted to give you a heads up as to how all that rolled out yesterday. And hopefully this information is helpful. And again, thanks for tuning in and listening. And again, if you have questions, let us know and we'll try to get those answered. And I look forward to talking to you on Thursday. Have a great day.